Officer down! I repeat, officer down!
Welcome back to 1033. This is your host, Nathan Kapler, a podcast created for a first responder by a first responder. If you are not a first responder, you still are welcome. This podcast is aimed directly at trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is complex and often misunderstood. Our brave men and women who serve our communities often end up with behavioral and psychological issues as a result of experienced trauma from their careers. My goal is to share what I know, my personal experience with PTSD as a retired police officer, and continue to advocate for mental health while providing support to those still in their careers. This podcast is not a substitute for professional medical help, and I strongly suggest if you are in fact suffering, you seek out professional medical advice. Please join me on this episode as I continue to expose the reality of PTSD challenges. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. In last week's episode, I covered off relapse, retirement, and learning to let go. It was the final leg of my journey. The final challenges that I faced before retiring. The challenges that existed in retirement and getting to a point where I could finally realize that I now recognize that the best thing for me was to retire. This was a feeling I had in my gut, and my gut had always served me for years. My gut had always told me the right way to go about life. We use logic in our lives to try and lead us at times. And that can work in certain environments. In this moment, I can recall when I stood in my front yard and I asked myself, I need to make a decision once and for all. What is it? Do I stay and try to heal with the Mounties? Or do I pack my bags and go? In that moment, I knew if I stayed, that I would go back to a life of service, re-experiencing more trauma, and putting somebody else ahead of me and my own needs. And I had done this for my entire life. I had served others. I had served the RCMP. But along the way, I had never really experienced serving myself and solely serving myself. As I sat with that thought and stayed engaged with the body and how that was registering within, I was overwhelmed with joy. I felt a moment of freedom, as if for so long I had run from serving myself. For whatever reason, I finally gave myself that moment to make a choice that I needed to make for me, not for anyone else. Something that I had also done in that moment, I sat with myself, and I had learned this skill with rehab as well. It's called inner child work. It's a concept to me that was when it was brought to me, I didn't believe in it. But as I imagined myself as a young boy, having a connection with that person in that moment, however that would look like, and you can do this too with yourself. You can reconnect with that young person from the past. In that moment, I asked one simple question. How do I honor you? Now, reflecting back, this was definitely a different way of saying, how do I reflect or have self-worth for myself? And from my very gut, I knew from that moment that I was done, and that the only way to heal was to finally say no to the Mounties and walk. The amount of fear that we hold to leave policing is incredible. We tell ourselves so many lies before we go, or when we have thoughts of going. And those lies can include that glass ceiling that we put above ourselves. We may tell ourselves this is all we know, and that somehow that the pain and discomfort has become so comfortable that doing anything else would be uncomfortable. Having a peaceful life, exploring your passions, your creativity, challenging yourself to grow in a new way, learning a new skill, whatever the case may be for you. The very thing that I feared most, which was leaving, was finally the thing that I knew I could walk through. And I had done it in that moment with myself. And in that moment, I felt those feelings that made me realize that this was the right path. I bring this up because many of us in our lives, as first responders, we are going to feel like it is time to go. And we are going to run from that feeling for a very long time. But that's the body letting you know that something's not right, that your experiences have had an impact on you. And if you do not get the help that you need to get, which you most likely will not, because you almost have to fall apart before you get help, the power of that feeling will grow over time. I personally had been running from that feeling too for years, knowing and feeling that my time with the Mounties was done because of the trauma and everything that I had been through. But I hung on for as long as I could, and I left with 14 years. Now, I will always say that I am proud to have served as a Mountie, as a first responder, and even to gain some of the things that I gained from my career, the good and the bad. But learning to let go of everything is that next phase in retirement, where I am learning how to do just that. Learning to embrace the post-traumatic stress and let go of the control or the power it has over me. Being able to recognize that it is there, but I know how to dance with it now, and to use it as a friend, as an ally, and as a gift. I have shared my entire life story with potentially the world, and my story was the very thing that I ran from the beginning of this. When I first launched this podcast, I did not want to share my story at all, but I did. And why I was so fearful of sharing my entire story, the fear of judgment, the fear of shame and guilt, the fear of others' perspectives of you, their opinions. When we can finally let go that too is also one of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves. You embrace growth in a new way. When I finished my last recording, I put my hands on my desk and I took a deep breath and I checked in with the body. And again, I was met with joy. It coursed through the body, all the way out to the fingertips, to the ends of my toes. And how incredibly proud I was for going through everything that I had gone through. Post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, addiction, rehab, relapse, having to face retirement. And I was excited for the next chapter. What does not kill us absolutely makes us stronger. We are designed to go through pain and suffering. It is supposed to be our best teacher in life. When you can embrace that, everything changes. Your perspective, your compassion, the love, your ability to care and have empathy, connect with others. That fork in the road will bring you back to the same road that you are supposed to be on. It'll be a slight detour, but it is the way that you were meant to walk. Now, how do I feel about season 1 being over? Slightly sad, I have to be honest. I've become quite accustomed to pouring my heart and my soul out into my room in my home about all of the deepest and darkest secrets that I had through my journey as a police officer. It's become a ritual now. Almost like going to the gym and challenging yourself for growth, to do the hard things that you know you need to do. I don't believe in this life that you ever stop sharing your story. So I most likely will never stop sharing my story. But I know that I'm going to be able to add many more positive chapters to this story. And that is the journey of life. Now, in my personal life, there is enough moving parts in it to keep me busy. Our third child is here in a matter of weeks. So the timing of season 1 ending is absolutely perfect. What I have been doing during recording season 1 is I've also been recording season 2. And from what I've been doing with season 1, I've now learned and seen so many people reach out that too come from the first responder world that want to share their story. And season 2 will be just that. It will be your story. I am truly excited to be able to start releasing some of the stories that are already starting to pour in. The reflections that people have into their own journey with post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. the challenges that they've faced, their experiences, and their stories. The one thing I've recognized even from telling my own story is that many others out there, while they appreciate what I may be doing, they're going to be able to grow from hearing others' stories as well. So I am truly humbled to continue to nudge this space along even further and to create a more deeper understanding into post-traumatic stress from the ability to share others' stories. I never expected in a million years for the work that I was doing here with podcasting to reach out and to help so many. But as we close this season down, it has been an honor for me to be able to share my story with you and to hear from you, the listener. If it was to encourage or support, I thank you. If it was to reach out to share your pain and your suffering, I thank you. And if you are someone now who is getting ready to share your story, I would be honored to connect with you. The most amazing gift that has come from this space of podcasting is the lesson that I have learned from it, from season 1. And that is the love and the compassion that others have for each other, for those that have gone through pain and suffering. The desire to want to be there for others to help them through that. The community that is being built around this warms my heart, reminds me that people care, and that there's a heartbeat in this world that revolves around connection and community with others. And for me personally, I believe that this is how we wage the war on post-traumatic stress and how we give back to those who suffer the most, the men and women who serve our communities so selflessly. As we continue to grow, I would appreciate any support you can give. I'm not looking for much, but if you can pass this along to someone in need, please do. This isn't just for first responders either. Depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress happens to us all. We are human. That is what connects us. As always, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being the other person on the other end listening to my story. Thank you. And I will see you in season 2. Much love. I hope you enjoyed this last episode. As we continue to grow, I would appreciate your support. Please consider subscribing to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Leave a comment or a review and share this with anyone that you may know may benefit from what we are discussing. Have a great week, and as always, thank you for tuning in.